Medical teams began treating wounded Korath soldiers alongside their own people. Vorth realized something that chilled him to his core. These humans had just destroyed the most powerful Korath fleet ever assembled, and they had done it while trying to minimize casualties on both sides. What would they be capable of if they ever decided to stop being merciful? The news traveled faster than light through galactic communication networks. In every space station, on every trading post, in every government center across known space, the same impossible story was being told. Humans had sent 3,000 ships to help the Valdari. In the crystal halls of the Centran Republic, Chancellor Maxis stared at the intelligence report with disbelief. His forearms trembled as he read the details, his silver eyes growing wide with each passing line. "Are you certain these numbers are correct?" Maxis asked his intelligence chief. "Yes, Chancellor. Multiple sources confirm the same data. The human fleet consisted of over 3,000 vessels, and they defeated the Korath forces in less than 7 hours." Maxis set down the report and walked to the great window overlooking his capital city. The Centrans had been part of the galactic community for over 2,000 years. They knew every major military power in their sector of space. The humans had been cataloged as a minor species with limited technology and small population. "How do we miss this?" Maxis whispered to himself. On the far side of the galaxy, in the underwater cities of the Aquar homeworld, similar conversations were taking place. High swimmer Coral read the same reports while floating in her command chamber, surrounded by glowing screens showing tactical analyses of a human fleet. "The humans have been hiding their true strength," Coral said to her military advisors. "For 5 years, we have treated them like children playing with toy ships." High swimmer, her chief of intelligence, spoke through the water with clicks and whistles. "Our analysts believe this was not even their main fleet. The communication intercepts suggest this was what they call a rapid response force." Coral's tentacles curled in shock. A rapid response force of 3,000 ships? How large is their actual military? Unknown, high swimmer. But we are beginning to suspect it is much larger than anyone imagined. Meanwhile, aboard a human medical ship in the Valdari system, Ambassador Kale sat in a comfortable chair while human doctors checked his health. Captain Hayes, the ship's commander, sat across from Kale with a cup of tea in his hands. "How are you feeling, Ambassador?" Hayes asked with genuine concern. "Confused," Kale admitted. "Your people have saved my entire species, but I am beginning to understand that we may have misunderstood humanity from the very beginning." "What do you mean?" Hayes asked. Kale looked out through the medical bay window at the human ships moving through space around them. Hundreds of vessels were working to repair the damage to Valdari worlds, while others escorted Korath prisoners to secure facilities. "We asked for a small support fleet," Kale said slowly. "We were hoping for 20 or 30 ships. You brought 3,000. "Well," Hayes said with a slight smile, "we wanted to make sure we could help effectively." "Captain Hayes, may I ask you a question that might seem strange?" "Of course." Kale looked directly into the human's eyes. "How many ships does your species actually have?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment, and Kale could see him thinking carefully about his answer. Finally, the captain spoke. "Ambassador, what you saw here represents about 2% of our total military capability." Kale felt his heart stop beating for a moment. 2%? Yes. This was a rapid response operation using ships that were already on patrol or in nearby systems. If this had been a full military deployment, it would have taken months to organize and would have involved significantly more vessels. "How many more?" Kale asked. Hayes looked uncomfortable. "I'm not supposed to discuss specific numbers, but let's just say that Earth maintains several dozen fleets this size for routine operations." Kale stared at the human captain as the true magnitude of human military power began to sink in. His people had asked a galactic superpower for help, thinking they were approaching a minor species. "Why?" Kale asked. "Why do you have so many ships? Are you planning to conquer the galaxy?" Hayes laughed, a warm sound that filled the medical bay. "No, Ambassador. We're not conquerors. We're survivors. Our species has a saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. but such a large military. Our history taught us that peace is precious and fragile, Hayes explained. We learned that the best way to keep peace is to be strong enough that no one wants to break it. On the planet Nexus Prime, home to the Galactic Trade Council, emergency sessions were being held in chambers that hadn't seen such activity in decades. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss the implications of the human intervention. High Trader Zen, a tall insectoid being with golden carapace, called the session to order. His compound eyes reflected the light from dozens of screens showing footage of the human fleet. Fellow beings, Zen clicked in the universal trade language. We are here to discuss a development that may change the balance of power in our galaxy. The humans have revealed military capabilities far beyond our previous estimates. A representative from the Thornax Confederation stood to speak. High Trader, my government wishes to know if the humans pose a threat to galactic stability. That is precisely what we are here to determine. Tactics that had worked against peaceful species like the Valdari. Typical, Reed muttered. No tactical flexibility. Signal all ships to implement defensive pattern 7. That's usually for training exercises against inexperienced opponents, Captain Murphy said, surprised. Exactly. The Korath fight like they've never faced an enemy that could fight back effectively. The human fleet began to move in ways that confused and frightened their enemies. Instead of meeting the Korath charge head-on, human ships spread out and circled around the attacking forces. Groups of vessels worked together like hunting packs, supporting each other and sharing information faster than the Korath could react. War leader Vorth watched in growing alarm as his first attack wave was systematically torn apart. Human ships appeared where his sensors said empty space should be, striking his vessels from unexpected angles and then disappearing before his gunners could respond. How are they moving so fast? Vorth demanded. Unknown, my lord. Their ships seem to know where we're going before we get there. What the Korath didn't understand was that human military doctrine had been developed through centuries of fighting other humans. Every strategy, every tactic, every piece of technology had been tested against opponents who were just as smart and determined as they were. Captain Sarah Parker commanded the destroyer group that hit the first Korath battle line. Her 12 ships moved together like dancers, each vessel covering the others while they struck at enemy weak points. Target their engine sections, Parker ordered. We want to disable, not destroy. Remember, we're here to stop a war, not start a massacre. Human weapons fired with precision that amazed the watching Valdari. Instead of wild energy blasts, human ships delivered focused strikes that cut through Korath armor like knives through paper. Enemy vessels found their engines destroyed and weapons disabled, but their life support systems left intact. Colonel Davis led the Marine boarding parties that began capturing disabled Korath ships. His soldiers moved through enemy vessels with efficiency that seemed impossible to the defending Korath warriors. Secure the bridge and engineering, Davis told his teams. Medical teams treat all wounded equally. Enemy and friendly casualties get the same level of care. The Korath Marines who tried to resist discovered that fighting humans was unlike anything they had experienced. These aliens moved like they could read minds, anticipating every attack and countering every defense. One young Korath warrior named Drax found himself surrounded by human soldiers in a corridor. He raised his weapon, expecting to die in glorious battle. Instead, the human leader held up an empty hand. Drop your weapon, the human said in perfect Korath language. Your ship is disabled. Your war is over. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions. Drax stared in confusion. No enemy had ever offered him mercy before. The Korath way was to fight until death, but these humans seemed to expect him to simply give up. Why? Drax asked. Why not kill me? The human soldier, whose name tag read Lieutenant Brown, looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Because you're not a threat anymore. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to stop your attack on civilian populations. On the Valdari rescue ships, Ambassador Kale watched the battle with emotions he couldn't name. The human fleet was destroying the Korath forces, but they were doing it in a way that seemed almost gentle compared to the brutal tactics the Korath had used against his people. "They're not destroying the ships," Dr. Nova observed. "They're disabling them." "Look at this," another Valdari scientist called out. "The humans are already sending rescue ships to help Korath survivors." Kale felt tears in his large eyes as he watched human medical vessels move between disabled enemy ships, pulling out wounded Korath soldiers and treating their injuries. This was not how wars were supposed to work. The battle lasted exactly 6 hours and 14 minutes. When it was over, the Korath fleet had been completely neutralized. 530 enemy ships were disabled and under human control. 240 had been destroyed when their crews chose to fight to the death rather than surrender. The remaining 30 ships had fled the system. War leader Vorth sat in his command chair, staring at the human marines who now controlled his bridge. His ship's engines were gone, his weapons offline, and his communications could only reach the human vessels surrounding him. "War leader Vorth," came Admiral Reed's voice over the communication system. "This is your final opportunity to order your remaining forces to stand down. Your orbital bombardment platforms are surrounded, and your ground forces are cut off from supply." Vorth looked around his bridge at the human soldiers. They stood ready but relaxed, weapons lowered but accessible. They showed no anger, no hatred, no desire for revenge. They looked like people who were simply doing a job. "What?" Vorth asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did you not destroy us all?" Admiral Reed's face appeared on the main screen, his expression calm and professional. "Because destroying you wasn't our mission, war leader. Our mission was to protect the Valdari people and restore peace to this system. That mission is now complete." "This was not a real battle," Vorth said, understanding beginning to dawn in his yellow eyes. "You're holding back." "We used appropriate force for the situation," Reed replied. "If you had chosen to negotiate instead of attack, this could have been resolved without any casualties at all." Surrounded by 800 Korath warships, fires burned on planetary surfaces visible from orbit. Streams of escape pods fled like frightened birds. Admiral Reed studied the tactical display with calm eyes. "We count approximately 800 Korath vessels," Captain Murphy reported. "Interesting," Reed replied. "Sir?" Murphy asked, confused by the Admiral's tone. "I was expecting something more challenging." The Valdari made it sound like they were facing an overwhelming force. Lieutenant Colonel Barnes looked up from her computer. "Sir, based on Korath ship designs, we estimate their total firepower at roughly equivalent to a single human battle group. Think about that for a moment. 800 alien warships, equal to one human battle group." War leader Vorth commanded the Korath fleet with satisfaction. 3 Valdari worlds were almost completely under his control. Then his communications officer called out, "My lord, we're detecting unusual readings on the edge of the system." "More Valdari, refugees?" Vorth asked with annoyance. "No, sir. Unknown design. The computer cannot identify the ship types." Vorth sent a squadron to investigate. 12 Korath ships approached the mysterious contacts, weapons powered but not yet firing. The lead Korath commander opened communications. "Unknown vessels. You are entering Korath territory. State your business or be destroyed." Admiral Reed straightened his uniform and stepped forward. "This is Admiral Reed of the Human Defense Fleet. We are here to assist our Valdari allies. You will cease your attacks on civilian populations and withdraw immediately." The Korath officer made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans. We've never heard of your species. Leave now, or your ships will be added to our victory count." "I see," Reed said calmly. "In that case, you should know you are speaking to a representative of the Terran Republic. We do not respond well to threats." The communication ended. The Korath ships moved into attack formation. "Colonel Barnes," Reed said to his tactical officer, "how do you assess the threat level?" Barnes checked her instruments and looked puzzled. "Sir, based on their approach patterns and weapon signatures, I would classify this as a minor police action. Level 2 on the threat scale." "Very well. Signal the fleet to decloak and prepare for intervention. Rules of engagement. Humanitarian assistance with minimal force." And then it happened. Throughout the Valdari system, Space began to shimmer and twist. Thousands of human ships dropped their cloaking fields. The stealth technology fell away like a curtain, revealing the true size of the human response. On the Korth command ship, alarms screamed as sensors detected ship after ship materializing from empty space. Red dots appear by the dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. "My lord," the sensor operator called out in panic. "I count over 3,000 enemy vessels. The computer systems cannot process them all." War leader Vorth stared at the display in shock. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen so many ships in one place. Even the combined fleets of the Korth Empire numbered less than 2,000 vessels. On the Valdari rescue ships, Ambassador Kale watched the human fleet appear with amazement that bordered on terror. Through the observation windows, he could see human ships stretching across the starfield like a metal forest. "How many ships did they bring?" whispered Dr. Nova, a Valdari scientist. Kale tried to count the vessels on a scanner, but gave up when the number passed 1,000. "More than our entire species has ever built," he said quietly. The human ships moved with precision that amazed even their enemies. Each vessel knew exactly where to go and what to do, like parts of a vast machine working together. Admiral Reed opened a final channel to the Korth command ship. War leader Vorth appeared on screen, but this time he looked far less confident. His yellow eyes darted around his command center as alarms continued to sound. "War leader Vorth," Reed said politely, "this is your final warning. Withdraw your forces from Valdari space immediately. We have no desire for unnecessary bloodshed." Vorth's face showed a mixture of fear and anger. "You think your numbers frighten us? The Korth Empire has never retreated from any battle." "Understand," Reed said with genuine sympathy. "Pride is important to any warrior culture. However, you should know that what you see here represents a very small portion of human military capability. We are currently operating under peacekeeping protocols." "Peacekeeping?" Vorth snarled. "Yes. We're here to stop a humanitarian crisis, not start a war. If this were a military operation, you would be facing a very different situation." The communication ended. Reed turned to his officers. "The Korth have made their choice. All ships, you're authorized to engage enemy forces. Remember, our goal is to protect Valdari civilians and restore peace to this system." For the first time in his military career, War leader Vorth felt something he had never experienced before: fear. But pride and fury burned in his yellow eyes. No alien species had ever dared challenge the Korth Empire, and he would not let these unknown humans be the first. "All ships, attack formation," Vorth commanded. "Target the largest human vessels first. Show them the price of interfering with the Korth Empire." The Korth fleet charged like a swarm of angry insects, their 800 ships racing toward the human formation. Red energy beams and explosive missiles filled the space between the fleets. Admiral Reed watched the incoming attack with the calm expression of a man who had seen this pattern many times before. The Korth ships moved in straight, not what the humans did, but how easily they did it. The Korth Empire was considered one of the strongest military powers in this sector. Another voice came from the back of the chamber. The humans defeated them while actively trying to minimize casualties. This suggests a level of tactical sophistication we have not seen before. Ambassador Kale's final report to the Galactic Council was delivered 3 weeks after the battle. He stood before the assembled representatives, his blue skin still pale from trauma, but his voice strong and clear. "Honored delegates," Kale began, "I come before you to deliver a warning and a revelation. The human species is not what we believe them to be." The chamber was completely silent as Kale continued. "We approached them thinking they were a minor power, hoping for token assistance. What we discovered is that humanity possesses the largest military force in known space, hidden behind a facade of peaceful exploration and trade." Murmurs of shock and disbelief rippled through the assembly. "But more importantly," Kale said, raising his voice, "we learned that this massive power is controlled by beings who value mercy above conquest, who would rather heal their enemies than destroy them. and who risked their own lives to protect strangers. The chamber erupted in discussion, but Kale continued speaking. The humans did not send us their deadliest fleet. They sent us their most merciful one, and that, honored delegates, should give us all pause to consider what our galaxy has become when mercy is more frightening than cruelty. As Kale finished his speech, every being in the chamber understood that the galaxy had changed forever. The humans were no longer the small, harmless species they had appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, a superpower that chose to be kind. And perhaps, in a galaxy where 17 civilizations had turned their backs on genocide, that was exactly what the universe needed. The question now wasn't whether humanity would use their power to conquer. The question was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready to learn what it meant to be truly civilized. Because the humans had just taught them all a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in the ability to destroy your enemies. It's in the wisdom to save them instead. And that, perhaps, was the most terrifying choked on his coffee when the alarm started screaming through Earth Defense Station. Red lights flashed everywhere as his fingers flew across the control panel. Lieutenant Webb's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, unknown vessel approaching. Badly damaged. They're sending distress signals." The main screen flickered to life, showing something that made everyone freeze. A ship unlike anything humans had ever built. Smooth, curved, almost organic looking. Like a silver flower dying in space. "Are they hostile?" Harris asked, hand hovering over the weapons controls. "No, sir. They're requesting permission to dock." And Commander, Webb's voice dropped to a whisper. The translation is coming through now. When that alien face appeared on screen, everything changed. Large, gentle eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness in the universe. Pale blue skin. No hair. And when it spoke, its voice was like music mixed with heartbreak. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Kale of the Valdari Republic. We come to you in our darkest hour." Now here's where it gets interesting. First contact had happened 5 years earlier, but this was different. This creature looked desperate in a way that crossed all species barriers. You could feel the desperation through the screen. "What kind of help do you need?" Harris asked. The answer would shake the foundation of everything humans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. "Our worlds are dying, Commander. The Korath Empire attacked our 3 systems without warning. They've destroyed our cities, killed millions. Our defense ships were no match for their war machines. But wait, it gets worse. We've asked 17 different species for military help. All refused. They say the Korath are too strong, too dangerous. They tell us to surrender and accept our fate. 17 species. All said no. Let that sink in for a moment." Harris felt his stomach turn. Entire worlds being destroyed while others watched and did nothing. Why come to us? We're new to your galactic community. Surely stronger species could help better than we can. And here's where Ambassador Kale said something that would prove more prophetic than anyone could imagine. "We've heard stories about humans, Commander. Whispers in dark corners of space stations. They say your species thinks differently about conflict. They say you don't give up easily." The alien ship was dying. Life support failing. Harris made the call that would change galactic history. "Ambassador Kale, please dock immediately. We'll provide medical care while we discuss your situation." 3 hours later, wrapped in a human blanket and drinking human tea, Kale shared the full horror of what his people faced. The Valdari were healers and diplomats. Their greatest joy came from helping others solve problems without violence. They'd ended wars, created peace treaties, brought stability to entire sectors. So why were they being destroyed? Our homeworld sits near systems rich in rare minerals. The Korath have been expanding for decades, taking what they want by force. They gave us one choice: leave or die. Here's the number that made Harris's blood run cold. Our scouts reported over 800 Korath warships in our systems. They have orbital bombardment platforms around our colonies and are preparing to strip mine our planets. 800 ships. The Valdari Defense Force? 40 ships. Most destroyed in the first attack. What exactly are you asking us to do? Harris asked carefully. We asked for ships, Commander. Enough to give our people a chance to escape, or make the Corps think twice. We don't expect you to win this war. We simply hope a show of support might convince others to help. Back on Earth, Admiral Blake called an emergency meeting. 12 of the planet's top military leaders gathered around a table, arguing about whether to help these aliens. We barely know them, General Stone protested. How do we know this isn't a trap? The injuries are real, Captain Torres countered. No one would fake that kind of damage. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Blake made the decision. We'll send a small support fleet. Operation Helping Hand. Now here's where things get interesting. What humans considered a small support fleet was about to shock the entire galaxy. Admiral Reed received his orders and began planning what he thought was a modest response. Let's say 3 carrier groups, a dozen destroyer squadrons, and support vessels. Nothing too flashy. Throughout the solar system, ships powered up. Hidden bases disguised as mining operations opened their sealed hangars. Vessels that hadn't seen space in months ran system checks. The Mars orbital shipyards worked around the clock. Ambassador Kale watched all this activity with growing confusion. The scale seemed far beyond what he'd requested. When he asked Dr. Vega about it, the human just smiled. Don't worry. Humans like to be thorough when helping friends. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Clark was casually explaining to Kale about their rapid response capabilities. This is the kind of fleet we can put together quickly for emergencies, Clark said cheerfully. The real military would take months to mobilize. Real military? Kale asked, confused. Well, this is just the ships we keep ready for emergencies. Most of our defense fleet stays in deep space. They handle the serious threats. Kale stared at the young officer. This is not serious? Clark laughed. Oh no, this is just helping out friends. If it was serious, we'd need authorization from the Global Defense Committee and probably mobilize the reserve fleets from the colony systems. In the Valdari system, hell had taken physical form. 3 planets hung in space like